Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Carl Tyler, and I'm a program coordinator with Intercultural Programs, or ICP. This office, Intercultural Programs, is the office who are hosting all of the virtual information sessions, as well as international student orientation. And this is our second virtual information session, How to Rent an Apartment for International Students. But before we get started with the session itself and the content of the session, I want to go over a few logistics. First of all, I also want to make an announcement. Um, Today, if you're watching this live and not the YouTube recording, if you're watching this live today, you have the opportunity to attend a webinar. The International Students and Scholars Office, this is the office that assists you with immigration and legal aspects such as visas. They are hosting a visa and travel update webinar at 11 a.m. local time this morning. So that would be in 2 hours. So once you're finished with viewing this important information session, if you have the time, you're welcome to attend that one. We will post the link to it because there's a registration process as well. We'll post the link to it at the end of this. I think also my colleague mentioned this morning they are hosting another webinar that might be something you would be interested in. I think it's called Success Starts Here, Your Journey at UT Dallas Inside the Classroom. So it's about academic life. That webinar is tomorrow. I had the time, but now I lost it. I think it's like tomorrow, the 12th from 8 to 9:30 local time. We'll post the links and information as well during the Q&A for both of those. So if you are curious about any visa or travel updates, you maybe have some apprehension about the visa process, there will be some time for some Q&A, and then tomorrow's session will be about the classroom. So let's go ahead and talk about the logistics of today's virtual information session, this one you're attending now. As you can see, we are able to, you're able to see and hear us. However, we're not able to see and hear you. There will be we'll have our formal presentation, and at the end of that, we'll have a Q&A section. And at the end of the Q&A, or at the end of the formal presentation, we'll open up the questions so that you can type in your questions and we can respond to them. And it'll be on the right-hand side of your screen. For now, the questions are closed. This event is being recorded, and it will be posted within 48 business hours to our YouTube channel. So if you do not have the if you're not able to watch all of it, or maybe you miss some of the beginning of it, you can go back and review some of it, as well as if you have some friends or colleagues who are going to be studying here at UT Dallas and they are interested in it, they will have the opportunity if they're not able to attend. And you'll be able to see the hyperlink to the video. All of the virtual information sessions are posted on an International Student Orientation webpage. And once the session has happened, we change the link from the stream link that you went to the actual YouTube link. So you can go back and look at all of them from that page, a very resourceful page. Speaking of links and emails, things like that, you don't have to worry about taking any screenshots or writing down information. Just focus on the content, because we will be posting all of the links and emails that we shared today during our presentation at the end during the Q&A section, where you can copy and paste from there. If you happen to be watching this video on YouTube, we will be posting it on our we'll be posting on our the description of the YouTube video. It'll be down below the video, so you'll have a chance to go and check out all of the important links that we're going to be sending to you. All right, thank you again for watching us. With all of the logistics information out of the way, we'll go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. So this is one of our more popular or well-attended virtual information sessions, because it's a very important session discussing an important topic: renting an apartment off campus. Doing so is a basic need to any new student, new international student, just like yourself. Next slide, please. So you might be thinking, okay, why are we dedicating an entire information session to off-campus housing instead of on-campus housing? And the answer to that is that securing on-campus housing can be challenging. And the reason it is, well, simply and directly, is that the demand is higher than the supply. And to be able to secure housing on campus, you have to apply early. And if you haven't applied yet, it will be very challenging. Now, currently, we've got, there's a lot of words on this PPT, but we have kind of three categories here. First of all, at the very bottom, if you are an exchange student, it's likely you already have on-campus housing space saved for you. If you have questions about move-in and that process, your first point of contact will be the Office of International Education. If you are a first-year undergraduate student, what in the United States we call freshmen, or maybe in overseas they might say freshers. If this is your first time to attend a university, outside of school, then the application priority deadline was April 15th. Right now, there's currently a wait list. They have a lot of, and the reason it's separate is that first-year students, freshmen, have a special location on campus where they live. They live in the residence halls, or what we might traditionally call dormitories, and their application process is a little bit different than returning students or graduate and transfer students. So they are on a wait list. As far as graduate and transfer students, currently the spaces for those are also full. However, if you want to know more about housing, the availability for any of that housing will be updated throughout the summer on the housing website, which we'll provide in the Q&A. There's possibility that something may become open if a student decides to matriculate at another university, or maybe a local student might decide to live with family or purchase or rent a property off of campus. So if you think this is a priority for you to live on campus, first of all, I would say that contact housing, but also even if you don't get a chance to live on campus this semester, there's always opportunities in the future for you to live on campus. So if you have questions, university housing are the ones obviously in charge of housing, and we'll give their contact information out again in the Q&A. That being said, even if you do consider it a priority to live on campus, we recommend exploring all options, including finding on-campus housing. So that's what this virtual information session is about, and we'll go ahead and move on to that topic now. Next slide, please. So renting an apartment, as you can imagine, needs planning and knowing the different aspects of what you need to consider to help you in your search. And that's the purpose of this session, to give you all the guidance and resources you need to make this search as efficient as it can be, but also as easy as it can be. As you may imagine, the process and legal aspects might be a bit different than in your country. So this is why we thought about providing you with this guide in hopes that it can make things easier for you. So during this presentation, as I mentioned, we'll mention some links and sections of our website as well as other websites. No need to worry about writing them down. We'll provide a comprehensive list that you can copy and paste during the Q&A. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description of the video. So these are some items we're going to discuss today. Our presentation is designed to be sequential for the most part, so we're going to follow the recommended steps to securing an off-campus apartment in a specific order. So that means first we're going to talk a little bit about temporary housing options. It's likely you may need a place to stay for a short time when you arrive here to finalize your housing search and securing that apartment. But even before you get here, there are some steps that you can take while you're still in your home countries. This would be the initial research process. And before you start thinking about, before you start researching for what you are looking for, you want to know what you're looking for. So the next step would be things that you want to consider and where you need to start looking. Next, we'll talk about the associated costs with renting an apartment here in the United States and in Dallas and DFW area specifically. Then we'll go into details about all of the documents that you will need to secure the housing and what the lease signing process is like. And then finally, at the end, we'll open the floor for any questions that you might have. So one thing to keep in mind is on our website, we have a housing disclaimer. And this is particularly important during the Q&A session. While we're providing general information about some of the housing locations, we are not sponsored by or advertising for any one particular type of housing or apartment complex. We just want to give you a variety of housing options that can be helpful for your decision. So please keep that in mind. We're not going to recommend a particular apartment community or apartment complex. If you want specific recommendations, we would suggest that you contact current students, including maybe some from your home country who are currently studying and living here. Next slide, please. All right, we're going to talk about temporary housing. One of the common themes that we will reiterate through our presentation today is that many of these processes that you will need to take care of will be done in person. As far as touring and securing an apartment, it's not something you can have completed while you're in your home country. There are some steps that you can take as soon as this virtual information session is over with, but we want you to understand the best way to finalize the process is to do is that when you're here. This leads to why we're giving you information about temporary housing. You're going to need somewhere to stay while you finalize your apartment search, or maybe you finalize the lease signing process. So one option is a local hotel nearby. There are plenty to choose from, and we have them linked on our resource guide and website. This is a great option if you just need a few nights, right? But if it's more than a few nights, it can become rather costly. So another option that could be beneficial to you if you need a little more time to search and secure your new apartment could be an extended stay hotel. And what these are, they're hotels, but they allow you to have a cheaper rate for a longer period of time, maybe for a week or maybe for a month. So it gives you a more cost-effective option. And in addition to moving, one of the things I was thinking about recently was just thinking if you ever have family or friends who are staying and visiting you out of town, this might be an option for them if they're staying with you for an extended period of time or visiting you come graduation or maybe just visiting in general. On our website, we offer some links to popular hotels and extended stays that are local. Some examples would be Candlewood Suites or Staybridge Suites. We'll have them listed on our. They are actually already are listed on our links that we'll provide. And in general, staying at hotels and extended stays don't require the process of certain documents and deposits, and they don't lock you into that traditional contract or lease like an apartment does. So these are options you can consider while you're in the process of looking for an apartment. But in some situations, students have decided to stay and rent from them because they may be similar in costs as an apartment. That's just something that you would have to look into yourself if you were interested in that. Okay, next slide. Okay, now we're going to talk about some things to consider. So those first steps you want to take note of before you even start your search. And of course, the first step to start is knowing what you want and knowing what will be a good fit for you. So don't underestimate, this is kind of a brainstorming session. So don't underestimate the value of this, because while you're studying here at UTD, you're going to go through a lot of academic and life changes, and while you're and experiencing culture shock. So it's important for you to find a home that can just kind of be a home away from home, a sanctuary for you. Plus, there are some unique things that we often associate with apartments and finding apartments here in Dallas, as well as the United States, that may be a requirement or maybe just something different than a way you secure housing in your home country. So here are a few, we got these in categories. The first thing that you would want to consider would be the location. So the name UT Dallas is a little bit misleading. Technically speaking, we are in Richardson. Richardson is one of the original suburbs of Dallas, so it's right next to Dallas. It has a lot of the benefits of living in Dallas, but more of a suburban environment, I guess. And so when you're doing your search, in addition to Dallas, you might list Richardson as well, or we would recommend that you list Richardson in your housing search if you're searching through websites. In addition to that, there's another community, another suburb called Plano that some of the students live in, and that's very near to campus as well. Plano. That is another one that you would want to search for. And then the neighborhood of Dallas that is next to the university is called Far North Dallas. So that might be, if you see that option maybe on a tick box or a check box, for finding apartments. Far North Dallas would be an example of some of the apartment communities that are near to campus. So Richardson and UTD's proximity to Dallas allows for access to public transportation. So when considering the location, we recommend you compare the location with a map of the bus or rail routes in the area, including the Comet Cruiser. And my colleague Shali is going to show us a map in a little bit and give more detail to that when we get to that section. So but for instance, the Comet Cruiser, some bus routes that link campus with the surrounding neighborhoods. They're free for everyone, and they also link to DART routes, which connect to other buses as well as light rail. And we'll have those links to public transit and during the Q&A as well. The next item that you'll want to consider would be time. It's another thing, as we mentioned, the process of viewing those apartments and completing the paperwork, signing the lease, they best start when you're here. But now you can start searching and narrowing down the neighborhoods and apartment types that you're interested in. So that way you're equipped with a good list of and so as soon as you arrive, you know exactly what you're looking for, or you've already got those schedule made of where you're going to tour. So the earlier you start looking, the better, and so that you have a good idea of what's available as well. One aspect of the timeline category has to do with the availability of the apartment itself. In most cases, the specific apartment you will rent will not be available on the day that you visit or the day you contact them. Instead, they may show you another similar apartment or a model apartment. So that's why we encourage you to use some of those temporary housing options in the previous slide. The timeline can sometimes be about a week when it's ready, or maybe a few weeks, but sometimes, depending on the community, it could take up to 3 weeks, maybe even a month. It's not usually as common, but there might be some time between when you arrive and when your apartment is ready. So it's important to budget for those temporary housing options before getting into your more permanent housing, or make those housing options, plan for those. Next would be to consider would be the size of the apartment. And I think this is pretty standard everywhere. The larger the apartment, the more the rent. And the way we categorize or measure apartments in the United States is by the number of bedrooms and also square footage. And of course, those are going to affect the price. The more the bedrooms, the more the square footage, the higher the price, right? Typically, most apartment complexes are going to have 1, 2, or 3 bedroom apartments, and some of them may even have studios or efficiencies. And this is just terms that we use to describe a one-room apartment where your living room and your sleeping area is the same room. The studio or efficiency option might be a good choice for a student who wants to live alone, and have that privacy, but also wants to be budget conscious and save some money because they will be priced less. You will want to budget according to the size of your apartment, but another thing you'll want to factor in would be whether you want roommates. And this is going to play hand in hand with the size of your apartment. So for instance, you might decide you want a larger apartment, but might determine it's better for your budget to have a roommate in the larger space with you. One thing to point out about roommates is that they can save you money, not just when it comes to paying the rent, but also splitting the utilities. If you have 2 of you, you're splitting utilities 2 ways, or 3 ways, 4 ways. So it'll make utilities, internet, things like that more affordable. In addition to that, if you go grocery shopping together, it could help. You could buy more in bulk, and it could save you money by splitting the grocery bill as well. You got to have the same taste in food though, right? So putting costs aside, roommates can help with that cultural transition as well. So for example, having a roommate from your home country could add to your support system when it comes to navigating the phases of culture shock. In addition to that, on the flip side, if you choose to have a domestic student from the United States, this could be a person who could help become a local guide or a local ambassador here to UT Dallas or US culture in general. Maybe they can help explain some of the things that we do that might be a little bit strange to you. Either way, having a roommate can be a good cost-effective and culturally significant option. Keep in mind, anyone who's living with you has to be on the lease or rental contract. And also there are laws when it comes to maximum number of people living in an apartment. It's called occupancy laws. And they're often determined by the size and number of bedrooms. The apartment complex you visit when you tour and ask questions, they're going to give you the exact number of people that are allowed in each particular unit. The general rule is that there are no more than 2 people per bedroom. When it comes to searching for a roommate, many UTD students do it through the UTD Mobile App. This is an app that you will need at International Student Orientation to be checking out of International Student Orientation so that you can get credit for attending it. We also have a lot of our information on the app that we have on our website as well. But I think it's important for you to download it and start using it today, because there are some student feeds, including a housing feed, where students will post that they're looking for a roommate. They'll also post maybe they have a room already for rent, and they want to find someone to rent the extra room. So this is a great option for you. Also, another option would be reaching out to your cultural student organization. Your cultural student organization might have a program where they will allow you to work with other incoming students to find a roommate or housing, and that can save a significant amount of money for you if that's the route you're looking for. If you need assistance in contacting your cultural student organization, we'd be happy to assist. You just have to reach out to us through email. All right, next slide, please. Things to consider. We're not done yet. We've got a few more things that we want you to consider. First, or next would be furniture. Unless it's otherwise stated, most apartments and homes in the US are not furnished. It's important to note that when you tour a model apartment, it may often be staged with furniture, decor, even photos or clothing sometimes, because they want you to picture yourself living there and make it feel homey, right? It's a good way for them to sell the unit. But those are usually model units, and they're not going to be furnished. Most apartments will have refrigerators, stoves, maybe even dishwashers. Some of them will have washer and dryers. Some of them will have connections for washer and dryers, and they will have, or maybe some of them won't have any of that, and they'll have a washing, like a laundry room, where a community laundry room. But when it comes to the movable furniture, like a sofa or tables, bed, chairs, things like that, that is going to be provided by the tenant or the occupant in your case, by you. Now, there are a few communities in the vicinity that will offer furnished homes or apartments, and they will put that on their website. They'll mention it. But if they don't mention it, assume that it's not going to be furnished. When it comes to furniture shops, there are a lot of options for you. Some students will go to IKEA, Walmart, Target, and in these places you can arrange to have the furniture be picked up or delivered. So that's beneficial for you. Some students ask about furniture rental companies. They do exist, but keep in mind they are very expensive, and it might not be a good long-term option for you. You'll also want to consult with the property company, the property manager of your apartment community, because they might only allow one company. Like they might work with one specific rental company, or maybe two, or something like that. So if you plan on renting, be sure to contact the apartment manager to find out if that's allowed and which companies. Another good source would be finding used. There is a Facebook Marketplace. It's relatively safe, but it's always advisable to meet in public and during daylight hours. The UT Dallas Police Department actually has a location reserved for selling things online in front of their police station. So we recommend doing that. We do not recommend Craigslist. I don't know. I think Craigslist is not as popular anymore, so this might be a moot point, but we would not recommend private meetups on Craigslist. And one other thing I was going to mention, and I think it's going to be It's not our next virtual information session, but the one after that, we're going to talk with UTD Big Howdy. They do have a furniture giveaway program where they do drawings for furniture, I believe, at the welcome party. And that might be another opportunity for you to get furniture, but obviously it's done by donation, so they certainly will not have enough furniture to donate to all incoming students. So look into other options for getting furniture in addition to that. But that is one way to secure furniture as well. And they'll be able to talk more about it when we have our virtual information session with them. All right, the next thing to consider are amenities. So amenities are all of the benefits or extras in your apartment or apartment community. So I'll list a few of them, but think about when you think about these amenities, think about what you need versus what's just nice to have. You know, what do you need to have versus what would be nice for you to have. So, for instance, I mentioned earlier a washer and dryer. Some apartments will have a washer and dryer in the apartment itself. You get your own. Some will have the hookups so that you can purchase your own washer and dryer and move it in. Others will have a laundry room, a community laundry room where it'll be operated by a coin or maybe through Google or Apple Pay on your phone where you will do your laundry. So obviously the ones with the washing machine and dryer in the unit or the hookups are going to be more expensive. They're going to add to the price of the cost of your unit as opposed to getting an apartment where you have a laundry room that you do your laundry at. In addition to that, some might have a small workout room. Others might have a really fancy gym that's really nice for you to work out in. And those apartments are going to probably cost a little bit more. So you might think, oh, well, I don't necessarily need a gym because I'm going to be working out at the university recreation. But you might decide, hey, I really like to work out. I like to do 2-a-days. So I'm going to work out at university recreation when I'm on campus. And I need a nice gym in my apartment community when I'm off campus or when I'm home. So or I don't want to go to campus on the weekends. It's that sort of thing. So think about all of those things and whether it's nice or need. Others would be whether the apartment allows pets or not. Most of the time they will, but there will be some associated fees, and my colleague Kushali in a moment will be talking about those. Also, are you going to have a vehicle? And if you do you want covered parking or garage parking? There will be additional fees for covered or garage parking. And if you know about the weather in Texas, half the year, the summer sun is very hot and can take its toll on your car. And then parts of the year, you might have a possibility of getting hail damage. So you might find that having a carport covered parking would be something that's a need for you and not so much nice, or you might not really care, or you might not have a car and you don't have to worry about that. In addition to that, there's going to be some places that might have community rooms where you can have gatherings and like birthday parties or things like that. Some of them might have pools. Some of them may have valet trash where you just put your garbage at your door and they come pick it up for you. They're going to charge for that though. And then some communities may have package lockers where you can securely pick up your packages, or some might just allow the delivery person to put it on your doorstep. So all of these things are going to be factored into the price. And there's a lot of other amenities aside from these. So on each website, you'll find for apartment community, they're going to have a list of amenities. So be sure to cover those. And then finally, the last thing that we have on our list to consider would be safety. This is another factor that will affect the price besides the size, how new it is, and the amenities. And it's the safety of the neighborhood. And you might find something that's a good fit at a great price, but it might be in an area that might have a higher crime rate or maybe not well lit area. In the links that we'll be giving at the end, we have a link to the City of Richardson's police department. They have a crime statistics webpage. So you can use this as a guide when you're looking. One other things that I want to mention when it comes to security is some communities are gated. These communities tend to be safer, but also, again, they have a price increase. Okay, and then also lastly, I just want to mention to keep your guard up to avoid scams. A good rule of thumb is that if something sounds too good to be true, it's probably going to be too good to be true. So make sure to always be vigilant. And a lot of times these scammers will they like to target international students because you're new to the country and new to the culture. So we don't want them to take advantage of you or your finances. Um, do not pay rent uh, with cash. We want you to be able to have documentation, and we also don't want you to be carrying that much cash on your person. Um, so if you don't have a bank yet and it's the first time for you to pay rent, see if you can pay rent with a money order. So that way you have some paper trail or documentation. Now, once you get moved in, you'll likely have the option or requirement to pay rent online. But by that time, you'll have your bank account set up, and then you'll have that digital documentation. So that would be the best option for you. So never rent an apartment that you haven't seen in person. See the unit you're going to be staying in. That's why we say it's likely you won't be able to secure that apartment until after you've arrived. Sometimes you'll see a listing and it's beautiful, but the photos that they put in the listing is not the exact same unit or the same layout as what they end up renting to you. So you want to make sure that you get a chance to see the actual unit before moving in and signing that lease. In addition, we're going to include some links that the UTD Police Department has, some recommendations for avoiding scams in general, both while looking for housing, but also just throughout your time while you're here. That concludes my section of the presentation. So now I'm going to hand it over to Kushali. Hello, Kushali. How are you?
Hi, good morning and good evening, depending on what part of the country you are in. Thank you, everybody, for joining this session. So we will talk about how to go about looking for apartments. So next slide, please. All right, so once you have determined what exactly you're looking for in an apartment, like what amenities you need, do I need a pool? Do I need one with a gym? Do I need one with washer dryer? Once you have determined that, um, there are resources that we'll discuss right now on how to go about looking. One of the resources that we have is our web page. So if you go to our web page under International Students tab, there is pre-arrival resources, and in there's a whole section dedicated to housing. In that section, you will find a list of all the off-campus apartments that are within 3-mile radius of the campus. You will also find a database for Dallas off-campus housing in there. Another resource that you can use to search apartments is a third-party resource like apartments.com or rent.com, realtor.com, Zillow. You could use some of those resources. Another great resource that Carl mentioned about earlier is the UTD Mobile App. So if you go to the UTD Mobile App, make sure you download it. You can download it from your Apple or your Google Store. And once you download, you'll need to log in with your UTD Net ID and password. There are different channels, and one of the channels is specifically dedicated to housing. The channel itself is called Housing. Under there, students will usually post if they're looking for a roommate or if they have a 2-bedroom apartment and they're looking to rent the second bedroom to someone. So instead of having to start the process from scratch where you have to go through finding an apartment yourself and then signing the lease and then looking for roommates and stuff, you may want to consider moving in with somebody who already has everything set up and they're just looking for another person to join them. So that is another option. Now, when you're looking for housing, whether you're moving in as a roommate with someone or you're looking on apartments.com or going through the list of apartments that are within 3-mile radius on our webpage, important factors to consider are transportation. Do you have your own car? Would you be walking to campus or would you be taking the free campus shuttle bus? The campus shuttle bus is called DART and the bus route is 883. They have two routes, 883 West and 883 East. And there are apartment complexes located on both the routes, the West route and the East route. If you look at the map here on the screen that you're seeing right now, the one in orange is the West route 883 West, and the one in green is 883 East. When you take these buses, there's no charge for it. It is free for everyone. You don't even need to show an ID, so you don't even need to wait for your uh, Comet card or your UTD ID to be able to board these buses. So as soon as you get off the plane and come to campus, you are able to take these buses. There's no charge for it. So when you're looking for an apartment, and if you don't have your own car, and if you plan not to walk to campus but take the bus instead, consider the apartments that are on the bus route. So both the routes do have apartments on them. No, each route has its own perk. Like the west route, they have more shopping areas. So like like 883 West bus, it goes to Walmart, which is which is a big departmental store where you will find almost everything. It goes to Walmart every Friday and Sunday. If you're on the east route, they have another perk. They have the train station at the City Line Bush station. So depending on like what you're looking for, make your choices accordingly. Also, say if you end up on the west route, that doesn't mean that you cannot go to the east route, because remember, all the routes connect through the campus. So you can have an apartment on the west route of the bus and take the west route and come to campus, and then you can board the east route bus and then go to the train station if you plan to go to downtown or someplace else in the Dallas area. Vice versa, it's true, if you're living on the east side, you can come to the campus and then board the west side bus, and you can make a shopping trip to one of the grocery stores or to Walmart. So all the apartments that are listed in the 3-mile radius, make sure to check if they fall on the bus route or not if you are planning to take the bus and not have your own car. There are some apartments that are within 10-minute walking distance of UTD, and you may not need a bus for that one. But remember, like Dallas is super hot in the summer, so consider that as a factor if you plan on walking, that it's not too far, no more than a 10-minute walk. So those are the things that you want to consider when you're looking for an apartment. All right, next slide, please. All right, so once you have determined what apartment you are looking for, go through the web page of that apartment complex site very carefully, because there will be associated costs with it, in depending on what they offer, right? So if they're offering amenities, like Carl said earlier, there will be costs associated with it. So read the fine print. That's what I would say. All right. So there are some costs associated with renting an apartment. For some of them, it may be included. For some, you may have to pay out of pocket, and the rent would be marked accordingly. All right. So first one is utility. So this one includes your gas. Could be cooking gas. Some heaters could be gas heaters, and then hot water is usually gas, and then electricity, water, sewer, and trash. So those usually fall in the utility area. Some apartment complex may have it included in the rent, and you may have to pay a higher rent as a result of that. Some may not have it included in rent, and you would need to pay, but it is billed to the apartment complex, and the apartment complex will send you a separate bill for it. So you will have two separate things, like a monthly rent and then a utility bill for water, sewer, and trash. Um, Electricity, usually you'll have to pay out of pocket. With electricity, Texas is a deregulated state when it comes to electricity. What does that mean? Unlike other states where there is only one electricity provider, Texas has multiple electricity providers. So you get to choose from a list of electricity providers. We'll be sharing that list at the end during the Q&A. And we cannot make recommendations on which one you should go to. But you have the option to choose from. You can ask former students. You can also do your own research online. Also look for what is feasible for you, because usually you're charged based on usage per kilowatt per hour. And some of them have schemes, like they would have weekends free or they would have nights free. So depending on when you're getting your work done the most and when you're using the most electricity, city, you may want to consider those plans accordingly. But we cannot make a recommendation for you, but we can share the list of all the electricity providers in areas near to UT Dallas campus, so you get an idea of what companies you can choose from. Usually apartment complexes, what they would do is they usually have some electric provider and they will try to offer you that. But remember, you have option to more than one electricity provider. So make your choices wisely and choose one that best meets your needs. For gas, usually if you do not have a cooking gas and electric gas, it's part of the electricity bill. But remember, your hot water could still be gas. So don't think like, oh, I don't have any gas appliances in my apartment. Everything is electric. My heater is electric. My cooking stove is electric. Remember, your hot water could be through gas. So don't be surprised if you get billed for that by your apartment company, or you are asked to set up a gas service through a third party. Do the due diligence when you're renting an apartment. Before you rent it, go through all the details. So besides asking like what is the rent, um, make sure you find out details on how things would work, whether you will be billed for water, trash, and sewer separately, or is it part of the rent, or is it a separate bill, utility bill that the apartment complex will send you. Same for electricity. On how things work. Usually you're responsible for setting up your own electricity, and then check for gas too. Are there any gas appliances in the apartment complex? If not, what about the hot water? And what about the heater? Keep those in mind. Also, when it comes to setting up an electricity provider, very important thing to consider is the dates. Why that matters? Because try to match everything with the lease of your apartment. So when you're renting an apartment, you would have a start date, like a move-in date, and a move-out date. When you are doing an electricity contract with an electricity company, it's cheaper based on the term. So the longer you are with them, the cheaper rates you will get per kilowatt per hour. So say if you're signing a 1-year term with them, and they'll give you a better rate, make sure that 1-year term matches with the dates on your lease. So say if you're going to move on August 15 and move out on August 14 for the following year, make sure your electricity dates line up with those. Because if you end your contract early, there will be fees associated to that. All right, so that's for utilities. Next is deposits. So besides the rent, the monthly rent that you will pay, you may be asked to pay a security deposit when you're trying to rent an apartment. So along with your first month rent, you may be asked to pay 1 month's rent as security deposit, or it could be a fixed amount that could be used as a security deposit. So depending on the apartment complex that you're renting for, it will differ. Uh, Also, a lot of apartment complexes, they'll ask for a social security number and a US credit history and a guarantor. Now, as an international student, you may not have that because social security for international students is based on employment. So if you just got here, you may not have a job and you may not have a social security number. Similarly, if you've never been in US, you may not have a US credit card and you may not have a US credit history. And they do give you an option for having a guarantor. So if you have a relative who lives here in the US, and if they're willing to sign as a co-signer or a guarantor, that will work. If not, don't worry about it. Like a lot of apartment complexes in the UTD neighborhood are very friendly for international students, so they will have alternatives for you if you do not have a social security card or US credit history or any relative in US who can sign as a guarantor. They may have you do like an additional paperwork or may have to pay a small fee, but they're very friendly and accommodating for international students. So don't worry and don't feel like, oh, I'm never going to be able to rent an apartment because I don't have a social security number or I don't have a US credit history. Don't feel that way because apartments in the UTD neighborhood are very international students friendly. So you will still be able to rent it without it, but you may just have to do some additional paperwork. It would differ from apartment complex to apartment complex. All right, next one is internet and cable. So be prepared to set up your own internet services. Very few apartment complexes might include a free Wi-Fi, and they may not be as strong and reliable. So do your research first before moving in, if they have Wi-Fi or not, and if not, you will be required to set up your own internet service. The two common internet companies in the neighborhood are Spectrum and AT&T. And the pricing would differ on the speed of the internet. The higher the speed, the more expensive it is. Also, there's a new technology now. It's called fiber, and that is a lot faster than the traditional internet services that we have. And then one of the two companies do offer fiber services, so you may want to consider that because that one is a lot faster than the regular services. Cable is optional only if you want to see US cable. You're welcome to set up services with them. Again, whether you're getting cable or internet, make sure you check whether it's month-to-month billing or they're going to have you sign a one-year contract. Try to match everything with the dates on your lease. So if you move out at the end of the year, say you don't want to live there the following year and you want to move to another apartment, you're not stuck with this cable or internet company or contract. Because if you end any of the contracts early in US, you will be charged fees for that, and it's always mentioned in the contract that you will be signing. So please make sure that you pay attention to the dates of contract for everything and match them up with the dates on your lease to be on the safer side. All right. Also, another option is like bundling up. So say if you're getting cell phone service from a company and internet too, then it might be cheaper if you have a bundle services. And same goes for cable. Like if you get cable and internet both, then it might be cheaper. So look into those options. All right, next one is pets. So most apartments are pet friendly, like they would allow pets, but there will be additional costs associated to that. So they may take an upfront a deposit for having pets, which may be non-refundable. Non-refundable meaning once you pay them the money, you're not getting it back. They will keep that money. All right. And then on top of that, they may have an additional rent for pets for every month. So there's rent for you to stay there, and then there's an additional rent for your pet to stay in that apartment. So the rent for the pet may not be as high. It may be like anywhere from $35 to $50 a month, depending on what complex you live in. But there may be requirements on what kind of pet you have, because some apartments are like cats only, no dogs allowed. Some apartments are like cats and dogs, but it has to be the smaller size dogs. It cannot be the larger dogs. Some would have restrictions on only certain breeds. So check with your apartment complex if you're planning to have a pet on what breeds they accept, and if your pet would be accepted before you plan on getting one. All right. Next is renter's insurance. So most apartment complexes these days require you to have a renter's insurance at the time of signing a lease or within certain days of having the lease signed. So they would need a proof of renter's insurance. A lot of times apartment complexes will give you an offer because they're partnering with a certain renter's insurance company. But remember, that is not the only choice. If you go online, there's a lot of options. In You have the option to choose another renter's company besides the one that your apartment complex is offering, because a lot of times the one that you're looking up online may be cheaper. So keep that in mind. And what does renter's insurance do? It will cover your property in case of theft or damage. And also, say if you had guests over and you had a party and somebody got injured, they will also cover the medical costs. So renter's insurance is usually required by most apartment complexes when you're trying to sign a lease, or they'll give you a particular day when they would need to see the proof of renter's insurance by. So keep that in mind and start looking for that as well. All right, next slide, please. All right, so those are the associated costs that we talked about on top of your rent. Now, you will need certain documents in order to rent an apartment as an international student. Here are some of the things to consider to have it handy when you get here. One is your passport and your visa. So you may need a copy of your passport and your visa to rent an apartment. You may need your I-20, Social Security card if you have one, U.S. credit history if you have one, and a U.S. banking account. Now, if you don't have a Social Security number or a U.S. credit history as an international student, that is completely fine because, like I mentioned earlier, they may give you the option of having a guarantor. So if you have a relative here in the U.S. who can co-sign the lease as a guarantor or a co-signer, you will be given that option. If you don't have a relative who can co-sign it or sign as a guarantor, that is completely fine too. Like I mentioned, a lot of apartments in UTD neighborhood are international student friendly, and they will give you the option to be able to still rent as an international student, but you may have to do additional paperwork or you may have to pay a small fee depending on what apartment complex you're trying to rent for. But make sure you have your immigration documents like your passport, visa, your I-20, and you will need a U.S. banking account to be able to pay monthly rent. During the vendor resource fair on August 21st, we will have some banks come out and give information on how to set up a U.S. banking account. You may consider attending that. Again, you are not obligated to bank with just those banks, but that's just to get you started on how U.S. banks work and how to set up a U.S. banking account. All right, next slide, please. You will be required to sign a lease when you're renting an apartment, and there are certain tips that are very, very important for you to consider before you sign a lease. Remember, a lease is a legally binding document. In US, it is serious. If you sign a paper agreeing to the terms on the lease, you are binding by that. It is legally binding. So if you break the terms, there will be consequences to it. Like you could be charged additional fees or the amount that's listed on the lease if you breach the contract. So remember, keep in mind when you sign the lease, you're signing something that you agreed to stay at that place for the amount of time that's listed on the lease. Lease could be month to month, it could be 6 months, or it could be 1 year. The shorter it is, the more expensive it is. So when you're signing the lease, number one thing you need to pay attention to is the date. What is your move-in date and what is your move-out date? Because you are stuck with that place for that duration of time if you sign a lease. All right. You must visit the apartment and meet the landlord before signing a lease. Because like my coworker Carl told you, sometimes they may show you the model apartment, but they may not give you what you thought you would be getting. So it's very important to look at the apartment before signing the lease and meet the landlord. Do not be a victim of scam. You do not want to sign a lease for something that you do not plan to stay on because you're like, oh, this is not what I was told I would get. So the best option is take a look at the apartment yourself. If you're satisfied, then only you sign the lease and make sure you meet the landlord or the leasing manager before signing the lease because there's a lot of scams going on and a lot of them target international students who are not aware of the local US systems. So don't be a victim. All right. Like mentioned earlier, most apartment complexes require proof of renter's insurance at the time of renting an apartment or at the time of signing a lease, or they'll give you a certain period like, hey, we need you to submit the proof of renter's insurance by X, Y, and Z date. So be prepared with the renter's insurance at the time of signing the lease. So what you can do is you can look around for a renter's insurance. You don't make a commitment to them, but you call them back on what the start date of your insurance would be depending on the start date of your lease. So both go hand in hand. All right, and like mentioned earlier, pay attention to the duration of the lease. It could be month to month, it could be 6 months, and it's 1 year. including any minimum. So if it's like you were required to stay at least 6 months on this property based on the lease, or at least 1 year. The longer the lease, the cheaper it is. And there are, and again, it is a legally binding contract. So if you try to break the lease, there will be costs associated with it, and it will be clearly listed on the lease. So read it carefully before you sign it. All right. And then another important thing when it comes to lease is when your lease is about to end and you're about to move out, that does not automatically mean that you're done with it. You're still required to give a prior notice that you will be moving out and not be renewing the lease. So for example, if you're coming in as a master's student for a 2-year program, you rented an apartment for 1 year. At the end of the year, you're like, oh, I found a I found a better deal, or I want to move closer to my friend's apartment and I don't want to live here anymore. At the end, 60 days before, most places require 60-day notice. So 60 days before your lease is about to end, you are required to notify your leasing manager or the landlord, whatever is the case with you, that you will be vacating that property and moving out on X, Y, and Z date. If you fail to do that, you may be charged additional fees. So it is important that you give a 30-day or a 60-day notice before moving out, depending on what it will be mentioned in the lease, the notice period. Like, is it 30 days or 60 days? Most places require 60 days. Some individual landlords may do 30 days, but most places these days require 60 days. So 60 days before you're going to move out, you need to write an email or a type letter and sign, depending on what the requirements are, and hand it to your landlord or the apartment leasing complex that you will be moving out, so that they can post it and they can have a tenant after you move out and they don't lose out on rent. Otherwise, they will charge you. So keep in mind, it's not automatic. Just because your lease ended, that doesn't mean you're not required to notify. Notification is still required, and it does have serious consequences. All right, next slide, please. All right, so again, we're referring to the resource page that we have been talking about throughout this presentation. So if you go to icp.utdallas.edu, if you go under international students and pre-arrival resources, you will see a whole tab dedicated to housing. And in there, you'll find all the details that me and my colleague Carl have been talking about. If you still have questions or are not sure, you can still email at icprograms@utdallas.edu. Uh, and that's our phone number, and our location is SSB 2.4. When you arrive here and you want to stop by and say hi to us, we'll love to have you as our visitor. We also have a student lounge in our office, so you're welcome to hang out there. So at this point, I'll call my colleague back on the line, and we will take any questions that you may have, and we'll also post link to all the important things that we talked about during this session.
Thank you, Kushali. Hello again, everyone. You got me to thinking about pet rent. Every day I look at my dog and I ask him why he doesn't go out and get a job and help me pay his rent. And he just looks at me with that cute puppy dog face, and then I forget all about it. So I've posted the links as a discussion and pinned them to the top of the Q&A section, everyone. And that includes, at the top of the hour, we mentioned, not related to this topic, we mentioned the special ISSO webinars that are happening. There's the links to those webinars. One of them is going to happen in approximately 1 hour from now. So if you had the time to attend that and you're interested, it's here for you. But yeah, we'll be happy to take your questions. Let me make sure. I just want to double check. Okay, yes, they're on. So we're waiting for the questions to come through. Any other tips or advice you might have while we're waiting, Shali?
Oh, I would say pay careful attention to the bus route, because remember, you're going to have to come to class every day from your apartment. So you don't want to get it like too far where you cannot find a bus and it's too far to walk. So pay careful attention to both 883 East and West bus route when you're planning to rent an apartment. So if you go to, easiest way is if you go to Google Maps, put the address of the apartment and put UT Dallas address, and it will show you if 883 bus takes you there or not. And when you're doing Google Maps, there's car option, there's bus option, and there's walking option. So look at the bus and the walking option if you don't have a car to see how far your apartment is from UT Dallas.
Thank you. And by the way, just want to mention, first of all, he's, as Rodolfo says, he's playing the piano behind the scenes, but I want to give credit to Neil Dave. He is one of our student workers, ICP assistant, who is managing the PPT. You can't see him, but he's here. So just wanted to give a shout out to him. And speaking of Rodolfo, our assistant director, Rodolfo Hernandez, is on the call as well. So he might jump in and answer some of the questions that you have. So speaking of which, the first question was, how do we find a roommate? One of the things we mentioned, there were a couple options during the presentation, which would be to reach out to your cultural student organization, and also you can look on the UTD Dallas mobile app. I just say UTD Dallas, UTD mobile app as well. Let's see what other questions we have coming through. Okay. Now, okay, the one of them was here's a quick one to answer. What was the bus name that doesn't require any identity card? Could you repeat it? It kind of has a couple of names. Kushali, you mentioned Comet Cruiser as well as 883. So Comet Cruiser is the name, 883 is the number associated with it, but there's two routes. There's a west route and an east route, right? So it'll be either 883 east, 883 west. And there are some other buses that come through here that are DART buses that come near or close to campus or connect with those two routes that'll have numbers. I think it's once you get enrolled, I believe, or there's a certain point, and please chime in, anybody who knows the answer to this, where students will be able to get their DART pass free of charge. But until then, those additional routes will have charges. There'll be a fare, excuse me. But the Comet Cruiser is free to everyone, anyone from day one. As soon as just like Kushali mentioned, as soon as you land, you are able to hop on the Comet Cruiser, the 883, and you're good to go. All right, do we see any others here coming through? Let's see here. I think Rodolfo answered one question. It was not specific about housing, so I want to find another one here. Is there a place, here's a good one. Is there a place near UTD where parents or family can stay temporarily while dropping students off? At the beginning, we mentioned hotels in extended stays. Those are some good options. It kind of depends on how long you're staying. Your family's going to be staying with you. If it's just for a few days, maybe a hotel. But if they want to be here for a week or maybe longer to help you get set up in your new place, an extended stay might be another option. A lot of times the extended stays are going to have more kitchenette stuff in them. So if they want to prepare or cook meals on their own, as opposed to going out for every meal or ordering room service or something like that, an extended stay would be a good option. And you can look on Google Maps and just kind of zoom into the UTD area and search for extended stays or hotels, and you'll find a whole list of them, as well as the list that's on our website. But using that list along with Google Maps will help you be able to locate it in the proximity, maybe to the apartment community where you'll be living. Yes. Okay. Thanks for the session. I have a support letter from Empower that covers from tuition and living expenses, which also includes my accommodation. I'm an international student. How will I get accommodation when you said accommodation for graduate students is closed? Do you know anything about Empower, Kushali?
Yes, I'll answer that. So that one is specifically to it's a specific cohort that comes from Africa through our UTD Africa office. So if you're talking about the accommodation, is only closed for on campus. You still have the option for off campus. So what I would recommend is emailing ISSO Perspective or talking to any of the ISSO Perspective channels on how the funding will be dispersed through Empower for your tuition and accommodation. Would it be off campus or not? So that is something that you want to speak to ISSO Perspective. We can share the link in chat for you. So it's ISSO Perspective at UT-edu, and then I can also give you the link for their prospective channels. Like you can submit Ask an Advisor form or make an appointment with an ISSO Perspective advisor, and then confirm with them on what your accommodation would be like. Was it just restricted to on campus, or would Empower be sponsoring off-campus housing too? But that is something that only ISSO Prospective Services will be able to answer because it's specific to a particular cohort that is coming from Africa.
I'm going to answer the next question. It's a 4-part question, some really good ones. If I sign a 12-month lease, but I'm only in the US for 9 months, can I rent an apartment for those 3 months to someone else? Generally, that's called subleasing. And you have to check with the contract, the lease itself, because most leases will not allow you to do that. It's possible you can work out something with the landlord. And so I would just be upfront with the apartment community. First of all, it's possible they might have a 9-month option. Some communities, as the standard is 12 months, but I've seen 13-month leases, I've seen 15th-month leases, I've seen 18-month leases. And then, of course, there's the 9 or 6-month leases. As far as 9 months, it's not very common, but again, you might check to see if they can just sign a 9-month lease with you. There might be some apartment communities that are willing to work with you. If not, they may have a step or a process for how you might work with them to have someone else be in your apartment for the last 3 months of your lease. So maybe taking over your lease, but it would need to be something done in conjunction with them, not you just renting it out from, renting it out underneath them, subleasing. Aside from the fact that it won't be allowed, even if it were, I wouldn't recommend it because you're putting your word in somebody else's hand. Who's to say they may not pay the rent 1 month? That could affect your credit. It could affect your ability to lease again. So we don't recommend that. The next one says, do we need to be there in person to officially get an apartment? This is the recommendation we have. Technically speaking, you could do things virtually, but most of those final steps, signing that contract, getting things taken care of, we recommend doing them in person so that you see that apartment itself. I think you mentioned, is it possible to have a friend visit the apartment and make an agreement with the landlord? They can't make the agreement with the landlord. You would have to make the agreement with the landlord. I think maybe that's what you're asking. That could be an option if you have a trusted friend who can view the actual apartment. But I'm still kind of hesitant in recommending that route. The next one says, after the lease is up, can we usually renew it at the same price, or are there usually price increases? They're usually price increases. I'm saying that because my rent went up after my lease renewed recently. Yes, that's the great thing about being locked into a lease. As long as the lease is locked in for that period, they can't increase your rent during that time. That's usually how the lease is written. But if you, at the end of your lease, for instance, they will probably raise your rent. It could be 5%, it could be 9 or 10%. So you will need to determine whether you want to pay that higher rate or whether you want to find another location. You maybe could use your negotiation skills and say, hey, when your lease is about to end, say, hey, I found a place that's going to be maybe cheaper than this. I'm considering moving to it if you raise my rent. They may raise it anyway because it might be a policy. The landlord or the property manager may not have a choice, but it doesn't hurt, to try and negotiate. One of the things I want to mention is there is a convenience of going month to month. Once your lease is up, if you don't give your 60-day notice or 30-day notice, whatever the terms say, you will go month to month. And that will allow you to be able to give a 30 or a 60-day notice, or however long the notice is required at any point in time. But they're going to give you an additional charge of a certain amount for the convenience of going month to month when your lease is up. And in some cases, that can be several $100s. For me, on my lease, I won't tell you where I live or anything, but I have to pay, if I were to go month to month, I would pay an additional $500 per month. So that's not something we would recommend. We would recommend you want to lock yourself into another lease. But as long as the lease, during that term of the lease, the rent cannot increase. But at the end of the lease or month to month, the rent can increase. Lastly, let's see here. They have an SSN and a bank account, good credit score. The money bank account is covers my fees, but no income. Is that usually an issue? I don't necessarily know if that's an issue. I think that, again, as Kushali mentioned, if you don't have, as international students, you're not going to have the same resources that domestic students will have. And they know that in and around the apartment complexes around in and around UT Dallas know that a majority of their business comes from international students. So they are happy to work with you to get you into the apartment. And so I would reach out to them. Just be very upfront with any apartment community and talk with them. Say, hey, I'm concerned about X, Y, or Z. And the leasing manager is going to assist you to help you get in. In a lot of cases, the leasing managers get bonuses for leasing, so it's their best interest to help you qualify for the apartment. All right. Let's see. You see any other questions that you want to cover?
Yes. So this one, it says like how to request landlord to modify or cancel a signed lease. If they deny, what are the other possible ways? No, lease is a legally binding contract and it's very difficult to tweak it or work around it. So think twice before signing it, go through everything, talk to your parents if you have to, talk to other friends. Like, hey, this is what I'm signing for. Does it sound right? Should I sign it? So discuss it before you sign it, because once it's signed, it cannot be changed. If you try to end earlier or move out earlier, then your lease ends, then you will be charged a fee for it. So no, lease, it's hard to change a lease once it's been signed.
And if you break the lease, it's called breaking the lease by moving out before the end of the term. There are consequences to that, which are written in the lease. You could have to be paying like several $1,000s to leave early, basically. So pay attention to every aspect of the lease before you sign it.
I think one new one came up, like, do we need to sign the lease from here when we're overseas, or can we lock the spots and sign once we reach? Like we recommended, do not sign a lease for something that you have not seen with your own eyes. Like at the very least, at least have these days, like after COVID, there is a feature called virtual tours. So even like to lock your spot, you can get a virtual tour to see what it looks like. And then it would be a good idea to lock the spot and not sign the lease until you get here, so you actually see what it is like. Because what if it's not it's not matching what the pictures that you were shown? So yeah, but you can request like a virtual showing before from overseas, so you are not wasting your time when you get here, and like, okay, this is what I'm looking to move into. If you're satisfied, you can lock the spot and then sign it when you arrive here. So yeah, no, not recommended doing it from overseas unless you have seen the apartment, or if you have like a very close family member who's seen the apartment and you trust them enough to be able to move forward with it. Another option would be like, if you don't want to start from scratch, and if somebody already has it and they've been here, you can consider moving in as a roommate with them if you don't want to go through that process. And if you feel like, oh, I have to have housing before I get here, there's always an option of moving in as a roommate. You can do like you can go to UTD Mobile App and see if anybody's looking for a roommate, which they are all the time because we keep getting notifications the whole time. So consider, like, you may want to consider moving in as a roommate instead of starting from scratch and going through the whole process.
Okay, we do have one question. Neil answered it. I want to cover it. Was if you're rooming with roommates, will each of us have to sign the lease, or should it be taken under one person's name? Each of you will have to sign the lease. Anyone who is 18 years of age or over has to be a signature party on the lease. I can't imagine any lease allowing others to not be on there. And even people who are under age 18 have to be mentioned in the lease, like usually. Now, they will require you to do this, but you will want to do this as well. You do not want to be responsible for any damage that your roommate causes, because if you're the only party on the lease and you have someone living there who's not on the lease with you, then you're responsible for them legally as far as any, damage. And then of course, if they find out they're there, you are violating the lease by having them there. So if somebody's moving in, you already have a lease, and maybe somebody's moving in with you, contact your property manager to have them added to the lease, because they would have to sign it as well. Usually they'll let someone after the fact join a lease too. Okay. When applying for housing through websites, they require a U.S. phone number. As an international student, I don't have one yet. Because of that, I cannot create an account or apply for housing. I think with this issue, you would contact, there's going to be a phone number, or not, excuse me, not a phone number. There's going to be like an email or a way to contact the particular apartment community, and you could talk with them about that. Also, Rodolfo mentioned that you could probably find a vendor to provide you a US phone number. There are different, like, what do they call them? VoIPs, like virtual phone numbers that you could get. You could also consider using a friend's number. But if you're having trouble getting that US phone number while you're living overseas, I would just email the apartment community, or email the, or maybe they have like a virtual chat bot or something like that you can talk with them and say, I want to create an account to start the application process, but I don't have a US phone number yet. And they will probably respond with some alternatives for you. Trying to look through some of the other ones.
So is it possible to work from Northside Apartments to JSOM? Yes, it's usually a 10-minute walk, or you can bike, and it's also on the East Side bus route. I think this one was answered by Neil and Rodolfo. In case of house equipment repairs, does the apartment office landlord usually take care of it? It depends. So you read the lease terms carefully on what it says. Usually, most apartment complexes have maintenance services on site, and you'll need to put in a work order for that one. But if you broke something, so if it's just a wear and tear that is out of your control, you would not be charged for it. But if you broke something that belonged to the apartment complex, you may be charged a fee for it. So read the lease carefully on how repairs work, and if it's just a wear and tear, or is it something that was an accident and it broke.
And I'm sorry, I was paying attention to some of the chat here. Did you mention like the apartment condition form when you move in? I don't want to say something that you already said. Did you mention that?
I mean, I think I briefly mentioned like we've been talking about, like, take a look at the apartment before you move in, because if somebody else, if they're tenant before you had the damages, you don't want to be billed for damages that were done by somebody else. So when you move in, it's always good idea to take a picture and notify the apartment leasing office of the condition of the apartment. So and keep that on file until when you move out, so you can compare, like, hey, this is how it was when I moved in versus when you're moving. And so it wasn't done while you were staying there, but it was done by a previous tenant.
Correct. Good. Yeah, good advice. Most of the property management companies, like if you're renting them from an apartment complex, have a process. Once you sign the lease, they'll give you a form that has a list of all the rooms and all the different parts of the rooms, and you complete that form, and you have like 48 hours or 24 hours to complete it, and mention all of the pre-existing, maybe like little nicks, or maybe a paint chip or something, like usually it's smaller stuff, but there might be some things they forgot forgot when they got the apartment ready. And this is your opportunity to list all those out to kind of save you the liability, but also if it's something that they need to address, then it lets them know like, hey, address it. You sign it, date it, you submit it into them. Anything that you turn into them, make sure you keep a copy for your own records. If you are renting from a small landlord, they may not have this form. So as Kushali mentioned, it's best to have that, to just document it yourself and then submit that document to them.
Pictures or making
Yeah.
videos or pictures, that's the best proof that you can have, because in the future when you're moving out, they're like, oh, you're being charged for these because this was broken. You can pull out those pictures that are on file and show it to them like, hey, this was done before I moved in. All right, another question that came in, I think was already answered by Neil, but we'll just still cover it. Like, are graduate students allowed to have undergrads as roommate? Very good question. So with undergrads, the only requirement is if they're first year bachelor's or undergraduate students, they're required to stay on campus. But if on campus housing is full, in like yourself, if they're also looking for off-campus housing, no issues in having them as roommates. So yeah, you can be roommate with anybody, but be careful if it's a non-UTD person and if you're trying to be a roommate with them.
Some good advice. There was something, first of all, during your portion of the presentation, you mentioned the heat and walking, and that's a really good point of advice. There are some places that are within walking distance, but just be aware that during certain times of the year, it's going to be you're going to be pretty sweaty by the time you get to your destination near on campus. So yeah, keep that in mind. One other thing I wanted to mention was you had talked earlier about bundling, mentioning like if somebody wanted to get cable, the cable company also provides internet, and so you could bundle and save money. Or maybe the cell phone service company provides home internet, so you could bundle with that and save money. One other way to bundle is if you are planning on getting a car, you're going to have auto insurance, and your auto insurance company, I'm sure 99% of them offer renter's insurance as well. And if you bundle that together, then that will save you money on the renter's insurance, because, I think a lot of renter's insurance, the companies will have one they work with, but it's usually more expensive. I bundle mine, and the renter's insurance portion of mine is the cost each month of a pizza. It's relatively affordable, and in addition to complying with the lease requirements, I'm also having peace of mind for myself, and the fact that I've got my belongings protected in the event of weather-related damage, or maybe a water line breakage, or hopefully no, it doesn't happen, but like an intruder or something like that. All right, it looks like, I think that's the end of our questions. Let's see here. Just want to double check and make sure. Yeah, okay. Well, any final tips or advice?
Well, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. And a lot of cultural student organizations, they are offering great services. So depending on the country of origin, look out for your cultural student organization and see uh, what recommendations they have for housing, in banking, and everything. That when you get here, if you need help finding a cultural student organization, email icprograms@utdallas.edu and we can send you their contact information. Here says, how frequent is the bus service? Is it feasible to stay at a distance from the campus and rely on the bus service for transport? So if you're talking about on-campus bus service, if the west side's every 15 minutes, the east side is every 30 minutes. If you're looking at the broader DFW Metroplex area and taking a DART bus that requires a bus pass or a bus fare, that could be longer, because you're going to have to take another bus and then get to one of the bus stops that's closer to 883, so you will require like transfer of buses between two buses, because the buses that go directly to UT Dallas are only 883 buses. The other routes might require transfer in between.
I guess my question about insurance, or my comment about insurance, brought up a question: if there's any natural calamity, and the property gets damaged, will that be covered under renter's insurance? In addition to renter's insurance, the property, they're going to have their own insurance to cover their property. What the renter's insurance covers is it usually covers damage that's caused by the tenant's negligence. So maybe you leave your water on, or it's winter and you don't let your faucets drip, and the pipes freeze, and that's a cultural thing that you might have to get used to, is dripping your faucets, dripping your taps at night when the temperatures are below freezing. If you weren't to do that and the pipes freeze, but then they thawed out and it busted the pipe and it caused a flood and maybe damaged your apartment and maybe some of the surrounding apartments or the apartment below you, then your renter's insurance would cover and protect that. But generally, they're going to have their own insurance that protects the property. But ensuring that they have their insurance and you have your insurance, both you and them will be covered in aspects when it comes to natural calamities. Yeah, good question.
Another one question is, how close are grocery stores? So the 883 West bus has quite a few grocery stores on the line, and the biggest departmental store is Walmart. The bus stops by Walmart every Friday and Sunday, and I believe the 883 East has the TomTom on the route.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's going to be more grocery stores. I think in addition to, you mentioned Walmart and Target. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's Walmart, Target, Sprouts is another supermarket, and a Tom Thumb on the west side. On the east side, there's only the Tom Thumb. There is a Whole Foods market, but it's kind of close to it's on the other side of the terminus for the east. The west side is going to have more shopping options. The east side is going to have more nature. It's a lot greener on the east side, more trees, a lot more bike trails, that sort of thing. Whereas the west side will have more convenient access to, and you can always go back and over. Again, as Kashali mentioned, you can meet at the UTD bus station and then swap routes and go from east to west or west to east. It's really going to be about your individual tastes and preferences. Tom Thumb is on both sides. Tom Thumb is, in most cases, your Walmart's going to be your cheapest option when it comes to local grocery stores, maybe followed by Target. Yeah.
I just wanted to add a couple more things too. So during vendor resource fair, there are also grocery stores that come in during the vendor resource fair, and some of them offer either like free shipping, or some of them even offer free delivery if you buy above a certain amount. And some, I think one of them even offers a free ride to UTD student if you buy grocery worth a certain amount. So you can check them out at the vendor resource fair. And another option that a lot of students use for grocery shopping, if there's a particular especially ethnic grocery stores they're shopping from, they would like Uber, like 3 or 4 roommates, they would Uber together, and then they will share the cost. So those are some of the things. But yeah, do check out the vendor resource fair. There will be grocery stores that'll be coming out and explaining their options, like how they offer either free delivery or free ride to UTD student if you buy for a certain amount.
We'll do one last question before we finish today's information session. The question was, is it safer on east side or west side? It's relatively safe on both sides, and you might find some apartment communities that are more or less safe on either side. So I really don't want to make their distinction as far as safety is concerned between east side and west side. You need to look at the specific apartment community, talk to current UTD students. They might have some advice on places or communities where they think are safer, or maybe those that you might want to avoid. But this, all to say, this part of Dallas is relatively, or Richardson technically, is relatively safe area. yeah, we will be talking in international student orientation about how to be vigilant. We'll have the UTD Police Department talk with you about, paying attention to your surroundings. Just kind of, don't walk through a dark lit area, that sort of thing. That part of safety is just being aware and maybe not being buried into your phone and being aware of your surroundings, and locking your door, things like that. There is the City of Richardson's link to crime statistics if you're more curious about that information as well, as far as crime rates in certain areas. All right. Let me just make sure. One, is it advisable to rent within a house setup or apartments as a first timer in the country? It's really going to depend on your budget, to be honest with you. The house is going to be more expensive than an apartment. If there are several of you who are rooming, maybe renting a house, that might be advisable. The biggest difference, I think, aside from the price, between house and an apartment is going to be easier probably for you to get into and easy for you to find. But as far as the house is concerned, you're less likely to deal with property management companies. Not necessarily the case, you might, but the property management companies might be smaller. They're going to operate a little bit differently than apartment communities, and you'll have to be responsible for mowing the lawn unless it's a duplex. So and taking care of the way things look from the curb. So that's another responsibility that you'll have with a house. But you might like that better. It might be a better fit for you. And chances are you might be able to find an individual landlord who owns a house who might give you a little bit more, like, I guess, individual landlord experience, however you ever want to interpret that. Like maybe it's just friendlier, I guess. Not to say that property managers at apartments aren't friendly, but having that one-to-one relationship with your landlord is always something that I enjoy, and I've enjoyed in the past. So it's just a matter of what your preferences are. Let's see. I thought I thought the questions were coming to an end, but we have a few more. Let's see here. Yeah, someone asked again if this session is recorded. Yes, it is recorded. If you just joined in recently, you can view it from the start, or you can go back if there's something that you wanted to hear again. It will be posted on our YouTube channel within 48 business hours. If you go back to the International Student Orientation webpage, in the virtual information section, there's that whole table of all the virtual information sessions. Each of those links to stream the sessions, once the session happens, it's converted to the link directly to the YouTube video. It makes it easy. You can go to that ISO webpage to is almost like a one-stop shop for when it comes to virtual information sessions and knowing all of the the optional presentations and tours that are happening, the vendor resource fair, and the process and steps to register for international student orientation, which hopefully all of you have done it. If you haven't, please do it as soon as you can. All right, I think that's it. I think we had a very thorough session today. So thank you so much for joining us. Well, thank you, Kashali, for helping out with this session. I want to go ahead and end it so that way those of you who are going to be attending ISSO's webinar on visa and travel updates can have a chance to click on that link and attend that session. So we want to thank you so much for joining us. Our next virtual information session is going to be another important one. It is called Paying Your Tuition and Fees. We're going to have a guest from the Bursar's office. This is the office that processes your payments when it comes to all things related to finances here at UT Dallas. So this will be a very important session for you if you're wanting to know about how payment timelines work, how tuition works, how to pay, etc., what you can pay with. So please join us in 2 days on Friday at 9 a.m. You can follow the same link from the International Student Orientation webpage to view. Again, there's no registration process for streaming our virtual information sessions. So we definitely want to see you back in a few days. And all of the virtual information sessions will be recorded. So if you miss one or two and you want to go back and view them, please do so on our YouTube channel. Any last words?
Well, I
Or
know
final
there.
word, sorry.
Just wanted to say, like, I know there's a lot of anxiety about people worried about their visas or travel bans. So if
Mhm,
that is your concern, please join the webinar. It's going to be starting in a few minutes. We posted the link at the very top of the Q&A session,
mhm.
and that would be your best place to get the updated information. And they'll also have an option to ask questions at the end. So make sure you click on that link, register, so you get the link to join the webinar in a few minutes. Uh, because we want to assist you and help ease that anxiety. But if you do have any questions related to housing or anything, please email icprograms@utdallas.edu. Or if you want to get in touch with your cultural student organization, who can also give you tips on housing or how the processes work, please reach out to us.
Well, thank you. I couldn't say it better myself. So we'll end it on that. You all have a great evening, great morning, afternoon, whatever time it might be where you're watching us. And we will see you at the next one. And we'll also see you in person in just around 2 months. So thank you and take care.
Sure. Bye.
Bye.